Working with Ajith was quite a pleasure. He gets really attached to you and he's like part of your family. Ajith went and did a role in English because he liked Sridevi and he did. And he's a cool guy. And I'm sure if he likes the role, he would probably do it. See, there's one thing about using a rag and there's one thing about making the rag accessible to the people. AR is very good at that.
Yes. Hi, Rajiv.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So, Rajiv, first of all, tomorrow is 20 years of Kandukondain. Congratulations. That's your second film, and would it be right to call it your biggest hit?
I think so.
Yeah.
I, I, I,
Though, first today
I
the definitions of hits and all have changed quite a bit, but yeah.
yeah. I think it is it was a big film, but I don't know whether you can call it. I mean, a bigger hit than say Minsara Kanuva because Minsara Kanuva probably was also 175 days and things like that at certain
Right.
positions.
Right. And so there's a bit of like we're traveling back in time, literally in another way, because we're also talking about a time when hits were measured in terms of number of days.
Yeah, it is true. You know, there was a kind of what can I say, a beautiful program by Roger Deakins the other day. And Roger Deakins was he sort of saying that, you know, the film that we all consider as some kind of masterclass in screenwriting, which is what's it, the prison drama?
The
No, no,
Shawshank
no.
Redemption.
Yeah. Shawshank Redemption is the film that we all say is the best script, and you know it's sort of in any script writing book you find a lot of mention of Shawshank, you know, and
Okay.
it's like considered as like the classic in some ways. But when it released, it was a massive flop, and what happened is that the studio just couldn't believe that it was a flop, and they re-released the film. And when they re-released the film again flopped. I mean, it was doing something like 6 million, and the second time it re-released, they thought there's something wrong, and then again it was a flop. So when that happened, it was like done and dusted and gone. And then eventually, the film got a life of its own as a kind of a cult classics with.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a DVD, you know, what's that? The thing before Netflix, where you would mail DVDs, you know, and that's what really made Shawshank what it is, and that was what Roger Deakins mentioned in his article. So in some ways, you really don't know what the trajectory of the thing. Even Kagas Ke Phool was considered
Yeah.
a flop when it kind of released, and it sent. I mean, I don't know about that. I'm not a great one at, kind of understanding the box office or something like that.
But 20 years later, when you look back on it, like, what is it? Is there a sense of accomplishment? Like, is there just like, oh, you know what? That was a good time. You moved on. What is it like? What does it feel like now?
You know, I don't know how to say it, but I think filmmaking is definitely different now. And I think the idea that, you know, you had to have filmmaking where music was an integral part of filmmaking has gone. So, you know, the importance of music is pretty much coming down. And in some ways, it also sort of tells you that certain aspects of storytelling which were so important in that era, that you actually told a character of a female protagonist based on her the lyric of her song. So in Chinna
Yeah.
Chinna Asai, you were actually telling something about her through her lyrics. And lyrics pretty much was your window into the mind space of the character. And I don't think that space exists now. So you have to actually do it in a scene. You have to, take it to a physical gesture, which is not the insight into the mind. And very often you have to explicitly state it. So one of the peculiar things about film writing in India was that some amount of the writing is being done by the lyric writer, some amount of the storytelling is being done by the song, and it's the songs and the lyrics that live longest in the minds of people, and the very few catch dialogues sort of, you know, remain in public memory for long. Like, Mere Paas Maa Hai from Diwar, or Yanikulla Irukara Mrigathai, don't bring it out, like in Tevar Magan. Those kind of one or two lines will be there, but people remember the entire lyrics of songs, and so lyric was a huge thing, and I don't think that aspect is there. If I were to make Kandukondain today, I don't know how many songs I would have in it.
Yeah. You would probably not be able to establish Aishwarya through Konju Mainakale, or talk about the Ajith, the problematic relationship through the song in which she's imagined as having a father who's constantly taking her away from Ajith in that song. You're pretty much, kind of laying a certain emotional graph in that song, and you probably have to find a scene way to do it, like through a scene or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. And like we were doing two things in Konjam Mainakale. In Konjam Mainakale, we were telling about the scene before Konjam Mainakale was very important. And that's one of the things that is also missing now. So you have a song, which is a slap bang song coming in. But when you had a lyrical song, which was part of your narrative, which was part of your storytelling process, you had to spend the first 3 minutes before that to bring the song in. So the lead scene is basically the scene between the two sisters talking and their ideas of love, and whether you can make a choice, you cannot make a choice, and stuff like that. And then you're going into the song where this girl is saying, I will fall in love, my man will come, X, Y, Z, and when she says this, and then the lyric is saying, Nattadum Roja Indre Pookanam. So the idea of the entire agricultural motive, which, these people are rich landlords, they are staying in a big house, but you don't have any agriculture. So what is the basis of this agrarian wealth? So I took the entire agricultural practice and used that as a song. And this girl is celebrating herself in happiness, and she's joyous and she's unbridled and all that, and through the song. So that's a kind of a thing that. Yeah.
So I've always wondered about this. So you establish in that pond scene just before Konju Mainakale, you have Soumya and the Aishwarya Rai character. They're talking about Tabu and the Aishwarya Rai character. They're talking about the kind of you're laying, like just you said, the segue is happening there, right? The groundwork for the song. Did you want to have a song for Tabu as well that kind of individually brought out her, what is special about her?
If you look at that's really the contrast, because if you look at the difference between Ash and Tabu's characters, Meenakshi and Soumya, Soumya expresses her feelings only to the old Tata who doesn't talk back. And so the idea of a woman who's not expressing herself, but you have to sort of feel what was inside this lady's mind. And in the case of Aishwarya, she's stating her point of view so strongly, and she's like, So one is the introvert and one is the extrovert. So her hurt, when she's hurt by the fact that somebody has come and there has been a mistake, and this guy has spoken about the house and Oru Nightle Light Illama Mudichikalam and all this kind of comedy. It's like the people are laughing at your plight, and you have nowhere to cry, and you go running up to the terrace, and you just want a moment to cry, and that the young gentleman watches you, and it's embarrassing, and it's that kind of character that you're playing with. So the insight into her mind is being held back, and then finally you get it in the second half more, where there is a coming together of the two sisters inside the bathroom, and then there is a coming, and the big emotional scene in the end with Ajith is what gives you a peek into the mind. So sometimes you cannot put all your cards on the table right away, and you got to sort of wait it out.
Yeah. No, I was thinking of, this is just an aside, but I was thinking of Rishikesh Mukherjee's Anupama, where the lead character is a complete introvert, Shamina Tagore. And there's a beautiful Lata Mangeshkar song that plays over her called Kuch Dil Ne Kaha. The way he uses it is that the song comes, but she doesn't lip sync, so that kind of, we hear her kind of a thing. So I was just wondering if you had any idea like that. But more importantly, I think, well, what you're saying is that even when there's a love interest in Soumya's life, it's Meenakshi who has to voice it as Karnamuchi Enada and not Soumya herself. So it's like the sister has to kind of tell what express the situation that they're playing hide and seek between them. Yeah, that's a interesting thing. Yeah.
And you don't have those teasing song kind of a thing, the Sakhi, you're having, and it's a motive in a lot of Indian film song, traditional songs, but film songs rarely have a song about a sister teasing, and there were such songs. So we always trying to figure out some kind of a song which is now not popular and would actually have a hook inside it.
Yeah. Speaking of this 20 years back, I was also been thinking about how times have changed a lot, especially after last week when we lost Rishi Kapoor and Irfan Khan. The general consensus is, of course, I'm not comparing the two at all, but I'm just generally saying that the general consensus seems to be that Irfan Khan, great actor, all the great performances and stuff like that. But somehow, when it comes to Rishi Kapoor, they seem to, the people seem to regard him as an entertainer and as something else, but he was like a very good kind of, a certain kind of actor, if not what is regarded as the Western definition of acting. And it's so changed today. So it's like we don't regard him as an actor, we regard him more as like somebody who's an entertainer. Whereas today we call an actor, an Irfan Khan and Nawazuddin kind of actor is what is called an actor. So I've been thinking about that the last week when I've been reading about what people have been writing about these two people. So
yeah, this is a very important thing, because sometimes somebody gets labeled as an actor and somebody gets labeled as a star. And unfortunately, in the case of Rishi, he was a very good actor and actually quite casual, but somehow he was seen as a person from the Kapoor Khandan or something like that. But actually, if you see his performances in a lot of films, and especially films where he was playing some interesting roles, I really liked his performance in Sagar. I loved what he was doing later on in his life, like Kapoor and Sons and all that. I feel that I really felt sad when Rishi Kapoor died, because I thought here was somebody who's going to inherit the great father after Amitabh Bachchan in Hindi cinema. You really felt that. But I think in the case of Irfan, what was amazing is that he sort of captured a kind of zeitgeist movement where, he was this wiry person who could, do a Pansing Tomar, and he could play the dark shade in Makbul and then be this incredible, guy like in the Lunchbox Fernandez. So he was literally doing Amar Akbar Antony in roles. He was capable of doing all that, and all of them are completely different. So one is this mean killing person who can betray and kill, and the other is this wounded athlete who becomes a dacoit, and the other one is this man who has seen no love and is going to be forgotten and is finding some notes. So I think he had he got the right roles at the right time, and I'm glad he got them. And to me, really he represented something phenomenal in cinema at something. And it was beyond looks, it was beyond a thing. There was something about him making those roles believable.
So when you go back to Kandukondain now, you also see a similar part of that when people were playing all kinds of roles, right? There was except for Mammootty, probably nobody had much of an image there. That they were kind of very hard, they were going to, try to be typecast against or something like that. So when you look at, I think Ajith had Bali the year before. Was it before or did Bali come out before you cast
Just
him?
after. Just after.
Just after
Oh,
you cast
I'm
him.
not. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay, but that became a blockbuster, and yet after that he had another hit in Amarkalam, but he's still playing part of a huge ensemble in Kandukondain, and without any kind of a thing, and you can't see that happening today because today it's all so hero centric or one person centric stories are, so they don't really kind of get to a spread of characters like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's a time where actors become so big and as stars that people are sort of writing for the fans and not for the roles. I mean, uh, there are so many. Each actor has a point where he's giving hits, and they have to sort of understand that it's not really. It's the characters that people are liking, and they come there for the 3 hours and they want the star, but they want to see how the star is acting in that particular thing. So if you don't if you don't sort of understand that that the role is more important than the actor, and if you say this role, this character would do this, and not whether this actor can do this. I think the role is bigger than the actor.
So, if you made Kandukondain today, and let's say theoretically Ajith was willing to repeat star in the same part, you don't think it would capsize the film to become top heavy that such a big star was playing a small role like that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, uh, I have not seen it like that, and I have never seen anything in that kind of you know in that light. It'll be different. I think now I think the economics would make that. I don't think it will be a reality. I don't think Ajit is going to come and do a film like this today. But you'll have to probably write something else for that. But if you were to just see it as pure casting and pure acting, Ajit went and did a role in English Winglish because he liked,
Yeah. Yeah.
Sridevi, and he did, and he's a cool guy, and I'm sure he would, if he likes the role, he would probably do it. And I think people should have that, because actors like them, they have a certain peak period where they look like somebody in 20 years' time, and it's important that they do as many roles as they can. And I think he has done quite a bit. So.
So, with this character, is that of a director who's trying to make his first film, and at first he's very uncompromising, but then he kind of compromises a bit on what he wants to do. Both in Minsara Kanavu and in Kandukondain, were there any such Rajiv Menon moments that kind of found their way into Ajit's character?
Yeah, I mean, they were what do you call, and not that any producer had come and told me do this, or ABM or Mr. Danu. They never came and told me do this or do that with the script. I mean, and there was nothing like that. But moments of that struggle that Manohar was going through is something that I experienced as a youngster trying to make it into the film industry. When I joined the Film Institute, I really wanted to be an assistant to somebody and learn something or go on a set and shoot, and I couldn't do that. So I used to do marriage photography and stuff like that. And the idea of doing marriage photography and struggling, what we can do. And not only me, a lot of my classmates also did that. In fact, a lot of them borrowed cameras. There would be one man having video camera, and all of us would borrow the video camera from the same person, and this was a reality that before you got a role, an assistantship to somebody, you ended up doing marriage video coverage. It wasn't shown before. People think film industry is about sitting in a mansion and smoking beedies and sort of sharing sambar, all these kind of things. But the reality is that some people have to just sort of pay their bills and hold their integrity, and they do small jobs, and that's what that thing was capturing. And basically, a guy who was from a fairly well-to-do family, when they end up becoming an assistant director, they are half depressed, they don't know what to do, and they are stuck. And if the girl says I love you, and you said I love you, but then you can't marry till you have done something. These are kind of problems that one has heard of, and then one just put that into the film. And you can see a musician struggle in Nazar's life in Minsara Kanava. So art is quite a bit of struggle. I think three things which are common in all my films, if you see. One is Nazir struggling to become a music director, nobody recognizing him. Manohar trying to struggle, but then making a compromise. And pretty much the same thing you can see in Sarvam Talamayam.
There's another bit of autobiography in this film, which is basically Sense and Sensibility. But then you also said that the root, the core of it came from the fact that you were thinking back about you and your brother, one of whom was, you were the less quote-unquote artistic person, but you ended up in the arts, whereas your brother was the more, he was more into arts and dance and all that, and he became a civil services, officer. So what are some of those, let's say, incidents or touches that found their way into the superstructure of Sense and Sensibility?
Yeah, most people say that art and, artistic endeavors are basically based on what you encounter at home and things like that. Especially in the art field, that is very true. Because if you look at it, most artists who succeed, one generation really tries to do something in it and the second generation succeeds. And that's true in the case of, say, K.J. Yeshudas. His father wanted him to sing, wanted to be a musician, and then sent his son to study music, and the son became successful. It's the same with A.R. Rahman. His father wanted to be a great music director and was as an assistant to so many great music directors. Just when he got the break, unfortunately, he fell ill, and then the son succeeded. This is the kind of a motive that you see a lot in life. Now, the same artistic aspect of my mother dealing with music and music being central and music being a liberating factor is affecting both of us. And in some ways, my brother is studying music. I'm not studying music. I'm playing cricket and doing all that, and we are all both watching it. But then, who gets a reason to do art and who gets academics is, I don't know, it's about luck, choice, or roll of the dice. I don't know. I'm a bit like Soumya in that, in the sense that you're lucky that you're doing what you like to do, but it doesn't mean all choices are yours and you're completely in control of your life. Because I wasn't in control over the fact that 20 years went by and I couldn't make a movie. Had I gone and stolen a bank or got life sentence, I wouldn't have had to wait out for 18 years.
Yeah. But you do take, there was a huge gap between Kandukondain and Sarvam. Yeah, it's like
it was very traumatic, and I can tell you that it was. I wrote and tried everything possible, and it was just not working. And it was a big pause button on my life. It's not that I don't try. Of course, I do cinematography here and there, and I'm not that prolific. And I am teaching. I'm starting institutes. I'm doing all kinds of things, but you just want that one big story to sort of come and envelop you, and that story must attract the industry and other people, and it must all come together. And till it comes together, you sit and watch from the sideline, and what can you do?
Rajiv, in these 20 years or 25, let's say, from Minsara Kanava onwards, 20, do you feel you've changed as a filmmaker? Because when I see Minsara Kanava and Kandukondain, there's a slightly more formal quality to the filmmaking. Whereas I sense a certain liberation, a certain looseness in Sarvam Talamayam, when you're filming the scenes between G.V. Prakash and Aparna Balamurali, for instance. Those are so beautiful, so casual. I don't see this, if you want to call it freedom, I don't see this in those earlier two films. So I was wondering if that was a planned style that you were going for, or have you just changed internally as a filmmaker and you kind of went with the flow?
Well, I'm glad that I progressed and didn't regress in 20 years' time.
No, I'm not saying either one is good or bad. I'm just saying it's changed.
It's very conscious. I can tell you that. In the sense, if you look at Minsara Kanava, it's a dream. And people are living in some dreamscape, and they are living in. Even the roads are not real. You're shooting in AVM studios. the places the people are meeting are that, and it's coming as a bolt. And the idea behind writing Minsara Kanva was basically about, hey, here is this father who's talking about this girl. And where is that girl? Okay, she's in a college in Ooty. She's talking about a botany class. And from there, she's going into Pupu Kumose and all that. And you're completely fallen in love with this girl. And then after you've fallen in love, there's a handsome bloke who's coming back from somewhere, and he meets his thing, and then you think, okay, we are setting it up for a love story, and suddenly you say, okay, she's singing a prayer song. Okay, yeah, I mean, good girls sing prayer songs in the school and college, like in Good Day or something like that, like Hamki Manki Chakti Dena. Oh, yeah, part to padranga, and then suddenly, boom, she says, I'm going to be a nun. So audience is saying, what the shit happened? So your writing style is like that. But when you start, when you change and then you see more literary influences and you try to say that, okay, there are motives that you set and you decline. There are things that you want to explore, and you're seeing more international cinema. And I feel if you see the settings are completely pastiche and kind of from the 1960s Broadway initially, and then they are getting a little more real. The houses are getting real in Kandukondain, and the conflicts are becoming real and things like that. And then they come, and there are a lot of coincidences. I mean, the Varapu Vada is there, and you're linking people through smell. I mean, those kind of things. And then when you come to Sarvam, it's becoming a lot more real, and the situations are real. So I think I'm moving more towards realism, and I'm discovering myself, and I kind of enjoying this process.
You mentioned Broadway, right? That style is most visible in the Vanilla Way song sequence, which is literally like a Fred Astaire or one of those Hollywood. I'm talking not about Broadway so much as the musicals of Hollywood's golden era. Now, when you thought about the song sequences in Kandukondain, were there any specific references that you had in mind that like you said, you wanted a Broadway look for that?
Yeah, I mean, lot of Kandukondain's song picturization was influenced. I mean, you have one Broadway kind of a thing which you reference back for My Eye. I mean, that's a film within a film kind of a look. Right. But if you look at all the other songs, they are in the real space, and it gets real. And when it comes to Yenge Kavide, it's completely real. And so, if you look at the first song, it's definitely National Geographic, kind of a exploration. And then when you do Kannamuchi Enada, it's Golu, but you're doing your ulta of the Golu. You're really working with peacock motif and colors and stuff like that. And then when you're actually going to Yenasulla Pogirai, the reference there was Sebastio Selagoda's seminal work on the Indira Gandhi Canal. And there was a very famous photograph of these 6 women walking in the in Rajasthan desert carrying some 5 or 6 pipes. And it's this famous picture from India. I was so fascinated by Sebastio Selagoda's work 20 years back. And I just kept looking at that picture and said, how do those women carry those pipes? Where are they doing it? What is that sun? How is it burning down so hard? And what's the beauty of the burning sun in the desert? And then I started feeling the thirst and said, maybe I should shoot something like that, and I should they need a transition device from this village in Karekudi to them. So maybe the train in the background could take me. And if the train is going to take me, I wanted a railway track which is just going into the desert. So I went looking for that in Kutch. There was an old salt line, but there were no train lines going there, and it was broken up. So then I finally found this train line in Egypt, and that's when, okay, if I'm going to Egypt, then I'll put the the touristy thing. But otherwise, that was my way I was looking at songs. I look at some songs in a slightly different manner. I feel you must have a visual climax as well as audio climax 2 or 3 times in the song.
And even in the progression, when you see Karnamuchi is all cool blues and like green, very soothing to the eye. Whereas the next song is Yenasalopokirai, which is warmer, and it's
Wow.
like it's very browns, and the sun is a major thing. So it's again, even when you like, they don't look like each other, when you place them next to each other in the film. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's also landscape becoming very strong in the second thing, as you're having an arid landscape and a green landscape for Kannamuchi, Kunjumainakale. So it's like a contrast of those.
Now, Rajiv, there are two theories of casting, right? One school of people say it's very important to cast people who know the language, because when they read the script, they are able to internalize the emotions in the script, and because they know the language. Whereas good actors from another language, however much they are good in acting, the fact that there is always a distance between what they originally think in, and the fact that this is a new language is always going to compromise the performance. Whereas there's another set of people that say that, no, this doesn't matter at all, because it all depends on whether the director is able to make good use of the actors or not. How do you see this whole thing?
You see, I think the biggest change in the argument comes when live sound comes in. So long as you're dubbing, and so long as half the actresses' voices are getting dubbed, it doesn't make any difference because a lot of the emotion is coming through dubbing. And the tragedy of dubbing is that there's somebody who's continuously sitting there, and he's saying that in the word bright akidunga sir, in the word clarity venum, in the word clarity venum. So every word is so clear, it's like a newscaster speaking. So the intonation goes down when you dub. You get clarity, but the casualness, the afterthoughts, some words just slipping out of your mind, that goes when you go away from live sound. And live sound in mainstream cinema is really a product of maybe 2004 in Hindi, and it's just about coming into South Indian cinema. I think moment you have live sound, there's absolutely no doubt that you got to have people who are completely comfortable in the language doing what they're doing. But if you're dubbing, then you're actually looking at what's the attitude that the actor is bringing in, which works with your character, and what are your options that you're available with you. How casting a person in this role is going to make this character that much more interesting for the audience. Now let's imagine saying that you had a character of, let's say, Kajol, who were to do the role of somebody trying to be a nun. I mean, okay, that's one casting that you do. Because she's so vivacious, the audience is saying, no, don't become a nun, please don't. I mean, they're doing that. But if you cast Tabu as a girl who's going to become the nun, she just could, maybe become that. So it would work in a story which is realistic, but in a comedy, it could work the other way around, So the casting is A, the purpose of the story, B, the characters that you have written, and C, the kind of energy and vitality that those characters in their natural state can bring to the thing. So an arrogant, brash man, would, he'll walk through this, But then the actor has to be so good to completely change his disposition. I mean, then you are looking at Irfan Khan, who can completely change his appearance and tone in every film. That's very rare.
So let's talk about the music, which is one of the highlights of the film. The most explicit ragam reference comes in the movie when Mammootty says Natakurindi Sahana Renditi Rumba Nalla Miss Pani partner in that Kannamuchi. But almost all the songs are fairly ragam based, except probably Smaya, which is a kind of a quote unquote Western song. There's Sindhu Bhairavi in Indian and the Kavide. There's like all these, were you like specific about the fact that every song would be somewhat ragam based in this film?
No, I mean, I wasn't like, we generally had a general understanding that we would explore some more, Indian tunes in this particular film, because it was dealing with kind of a Indian household and large agrarian household. So, you're looking at that. the kind of films which sort of come to your mind when you look at those big Havelis and people singing like Sahibi Bir Gulam or Jalsagar and things like that, where the raga sort of sets itself so well inside those tall pillars and big houses. Something about it, it reverberates inside that. And those were my reference points as a filmmaker and with what audio does to you. I don't think you can feel the raga so much about longing and loss if you were looking at a completely small flat in Chennai. Though you may be listening to it, but the camera doesn't see it that way. You will have to really work hard. So then comes the idea that you don't completely interfere with the music director's vision, and because he's contributing a lot to your film. But then there are some songs that you have got out of the music director which are written into the dialogue. And once it is written into the dialogue, then it becomes imperative that you do it that way. And that's what happened with, with Kannamuchi, where there was a reference in the dialogue and we had shot it. And we were really struggling with that rag. And eventually, AR cracked it. And that was what made Kannamuchi such a winner. See, there's one thing about using a rag, and there's one thing about making the rag accessible to the people. AR is very good at that. He's very good at, completely not giving you a typical Carnatic thing, but giving you a catchphrase which is new, fresh, and way of looking at it. And that's why I think film composing is so creative in our country, and it just gives you so much scope.
So when you look back at your 3 soundtracks, do you have a favorite?
I think innovation-wise, in terms of complete boisterous, kind of freshness, I think Minsara Kanavu was incredible. But in terms of the complexity of the musical arrangements and the perfection, I think, Kandukondain is brilliant, and it is AR at his peak. He had 2 films, both brilliant music, Alai Palde and thing, and even at the time of Minsara Kanavu, he had Iruvar and this. So he was dishing out his incredible stuff. In Sarvam, it was more of a. I was personally more involved in the music in this, but it's a different. I think I would say that Kandukondain is probably thing. But if you talk about complete freshness and something completely new, Minsara Kanavu is incredible. Venniluve is like a breeze, and Strawberry Kanne. Even today, when I look at Strawberry Kanne, how the hell did we do that? It's like so incredible. Like,
because I heard it blind. I had no clue about the who was it or what. I just heard that song out of the blue when someone was playing it, and I was like, this light operetta kind of texture, and so playful. It's literally like somebody just transported an operetta into a Tamil college classroom or something like that. It was incredible just to hear that. So, yeah.
It's also about the age that everybody is in.
Right. Now, you showed Kandukondain to audiences in the UK, that is the land of
London.
Jane Austen. London, yeah. And what was their reaction to the fact that one of their stories had been reimagined with songs and other kinds of things that is not a typical part of their cinema or their literature? This kind of,
Yeah, I think they were. I never expected such a positive reaction. Peter Bradshaw writing about it, and leading critics. And you came out of the screening got over it. It was an Odeon in Leicester Square, and there were like 600 people in the theater, and 550 were sitting in the seats for the Q&A session, and the Q&A session went on for an hour, and they had to literally tell us, hey, the next show is coming up. So while we left, and the Q&A section continued outside, and then went into a pub, and it went in for 2 more hours. They was ecstatic. And what was for me a very interesting thing is I was at that time staying with Girish Karnad at the Nehru Center. And there were some people who wanted to sort of meet and then have dinner. And Girish was, I don't know how can we host this? Maybe it's a terrible film, maybe it's awful, maybe it's good, I don't know. So he just kept quiet and he saw the film, and the moment the titles were rolling, he turned and looked and said, "I think we can have dinner. This deserves a celebration." He said in typical Girish fashion. And I mean, I'm so fond of Girish because I think I never admired anybody more as a writer than Girish, because he was such a knowledgeable man, but he was such an emotional man also. A lot of people are not emotional, and I'm a very emotional person, and I like strong emotions in his writing. And when I did my first documentaries, I shot with Girish, and then I worked in a film called Chaitanya with Mr. Pratap Pothan was directing, and I shared a room with Girish, and we became really close. And then I cast him in Minsara Kanuva, and I was glad that I could be with him. And he was the one who used to always tell me, "Rajiv, just don't worry, just make a film. You have to make films. You just keep making films." And I was gutted when he passed away. He was really a bright man.
So you should take that advice, Rajiv. You should keep making films.
Yeah.
On that
Not
note,
procrastinate so much.
Yeah. And I'm just going to take a few questions from here. Okay, there's one that's exactly what happened here. Just like, why did you stop filmmaking for almost 19 years? You'd have been a top-rated director in the country.
What can I say? I wish I was, but sometimes you have your own reasons. I mean, sometimes the reasons are explicit, sometimes it's inside your head, and you don't know whether your ideas are good enough or whether they are relevant. So sometimes self-doubt can kill you. I think, like in cricket, you just got to have a lot of self-belief and completely convince yourself that, oh yeah, whatever you do is going to be brilliant. I mean, I'm unfortunately not that. I kind of procrastinate a lot.
We talked about your favorite soundtrack among the three films. There's Darren Atman who wants to know which is your favorite out of the films themselves.
As a film?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to say because, actually I haven't seen Minsara Kanuva in ages. I sometimes see a small clip here, there. I haven't seen the whole film in probably 12 years. Once I saw a bit of it on television. I never watch Kandukondain, though it comes all the time. I can hear the soundtrack playing from other houses. I don't watch them. It's like asking somebody which of your three kids are ones you like. I don't know. I really don't have an answer for that.
Pichai Muthu NPM asked why Karaikudi selected as a backdrop for Kandukondain. It's a trendsetter movie which backdrop of Karaikudi and Chettinad.
Yeah, because I wanted this great architecture, and what happens is that if you look at the way architecture was shown, you had architecture shown in say Yajaman. It was shown in places like Roja. You had the Agraharam of Tirunelveli shown. We had shown the individual house, a small agricultural house in Bombay. But to show a big Zamindari Haveli in one place, I think it was Karaikudi that has these big houses intact, well maintained. Even today, it's quite a miracle that how that landscape has so many of these households. So I had seen a collection of photographs of Tamil homes or something like that. And then I sort of tried to find my way to shoot in those beautiful houses.
There are people who want you to talk about working with Ajith, and there are people who want you to share your working experience in Mani Ratnam's Guru.
Mani and I, kind of used to meet each other because Mani's best friend was Mahesh Sahasranamam, and I knew Mahesh fairly well. So I would see him, but Mani barely spoke, and and he was this man we were all in awe with, who had done Nayakan and Maunaragam, but he didn't speak much. He's was more interested in talking about tennis and things like that. And he would like doors and listen to music and things like that. Then I would be keen to know what he wanted to talk. So I think basically he found me to be a kind of Adhiga Prasangi who's talking too much kind of a thing. Then we were like work. I mean, I started working in advertising, and I would meet him here and there, and there was greater conversation. And then we had this interaction. But when he called me on for Roja, and we had a discussion, and I was showing him my stills from Cheluvi, which I had shot, and I had shown him all this, and of course he was basically calling me not to shoot. He was asking me to act, and I didn't go ahead with that. But I think he kind of, I thought he would be offended by it, but he wasn't. He was saying, okay, this guy is clear, he wants to shoot, and probably he'll be better off doing that. And that's what I did for Bombay. But when I did Bombay, it was quite a pleasure, because I never knew somebody could be so committed to the filmmaking process. And there's nobody more in love with, and it's like going into battle, whatever happens, come somehow or the other, we're going to get this damn thing done. And it's not, the sheer passion with which he makes films is very endearing. And so his way he gets these little emotions, you can't figure it out when you're seeing it on paper, but that's the idea of 4 children sleeping between, Arvind Swamy and Manisha Koirala, and the crane, going up and down, and I love you, Bola, I love you, Bola, and then coming back, and that kind of rhythm of letting, time just, move through. Those are all things which you never saw in other commercial films, because they were probably influences from Ray or, other cinema that he was bringing into mainstream cinema. So that was fascinating, and I kind of really enjoyed it. And we always, and there's always a challenge with when you're working with one. He's going to ask you whether you're trying to do the best, and basically you are getting into very big shoes. You have P.C. Sriram, who has shot most of his films. You have Santosh Sivan, who has done landmark work, and then you have some people who have failed also. So if you are going to go there and blow it, that's the end of it. So you got to, fire in all cylinders to come out, and that's what it is. It's like it's difficult to say that. Working with Ajith was quite a pleasure, because he gets really attached to you, and when he's like part of your family, and you'll suddenly open the door and come, you'll see Ajith sitting there and jabbering away with Lata and talking, and he was all the time in our house at one stage. And then I guess he got married, and we went for his marriage, and you would hear all those stories, and then you don't hear that much, because he's had become a father and he's become a very big star. But as a person on the set, he is just an absolute pleasure to work with. There's no attitude, there's no natter, and he's going through physical pain or anything. He was just there. I mean, I remember during the shoot at Egypt, it was like 40 degrees, and it was really hot, and he had to jump and dance this on the railway track, and there were all these ballast rocks which were not proper, and we had an actual train going on that track, and you could see a goods train coming, so we had to move the crane out and let the goods train go, and the goods train went on and on. It was like a kilometer and a half, which is carrying some mineral, and then we had to finish the balance shooting during that gap. So when this crane was being fitted in, he had so much back pain that he was just lying in a truck, the crane truck, to ease his pain out. And then he would just come back and go through it. And then when I shifted the lens, I could see tears in his eyes. And I went and said, "You got some dust in your eyes." He said, "No, it's paining. Don't worry. Just let's finish it before the next train comes." He's that kind of a guy who's completely giving his best for you, and it was quite a pleasure working with him.
This is the question I want to ask you too. When are you making the MS Subbulakshmi biopic?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's there's still some litigation going on, and so I don't know what's going to happen. Courts take a very long time in India, and nothing is clear.
Okay. Would you make a sequel to Kandukondain?
Yes, somebody has been asking about this on social media. It's a good idea. I never thought of it, but I did like Emma as a kind of a romantic comedy to do from Austin, because the idea of a girl who thinks she knows everything and can go around fixing marriages is kind of interesting. I also had once thought that what if I take Pride and Prejudice and convert it with brothers and have four brothers who are, struggling when trying to get married. And then I saw Kumbalangi Nights and said, shit, man, this sounds like what I was planning. So I gave that up. And so some of these stories, you can just change the gender and it can be a completely different story then.
Cool, Rajiv. All the best. Thank you so much. A pleasure talking with you as always.
Thank you. Bye-bye.